This post, featuring the latest AI-powered animation features added in Cascadeur's update, went completely viral. And for a good reason. Over 10,000 people reacted on X, and let me tell you, there was a lot of emotion, spanning from excitement, confusion, up to complete hatred. But how does it really work? Who owns the data? How does this fit into a professional animator workflow? Today, I'm here with Alex, the CTO of Cascadeur, to answer this very question. First, is it really AI?
It's definitely machine learning because we used a data set of several hours of mockup data, mostly, that we did ourselves to train the model.
How does it differ from previous technologies?
There definitely was a lot of motion capture. There have been walk and run generators. There have been physical-based systems. Was it a generative AI?
How does Cascadeur approach the implementation of AI in tool used by top professionals?
We try to create a program with a tool set that allows you to generate, then refine it, control it.
And of course, we address the elephant in the room.
I'm not worried that AI will replace programmers. More like I feel that it's a little bit overhyped. When digital cameras appeared, there was a lot of this conversation as well. Right now, when everybody has cameras in their own phone, a lot more people are able to do photos, but it doesn't mean that there are less professional photographers.
But before we get into it, I wanted to remind you that if you don't have the time to watch the full interview and want to learn from other founders and creatives at the intersection between XR and AI, you should definitely check out the XR AI Spotlight newsletter. By subscribing, you will get weekly interviews like this directly in your inbox and access to a list of tools and apps that allow you to experience Gaussian splatting in VR, on Quest, and Vision Pro. Just check the first link in the show description. And now it's time to roll the title and welcome Alex under the spotlight. Alex, it is a real pleasure to have you here.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me, Gabriel. Hi, everyone. And I'll try my best to cover all the questions.
And there were a lot. There were like an incredible amount of comments, engagement, and questions triggered by various emotions once people saw this post on X especially. So now I would like to go through this and use those questions as an inspiration for what people are actually curious, are trying to understand when it comes to the role of AI in animation tools, like, for example, Cascadeur. One of the recurrent argument is like, okay, this is not AI, this is just machine learning. So maybe can we start by understanding what is your definition, right, of in-betweening and where it stands with AI? Can you share the definition which you stand behind?
Okay, yeah, I can. I'm a bit afraid that I'll go a bit deep into this topic, but it's an interesting topic, but not an easy one, as there aren't any, at least to my understanding, boundaries between machine learning, AI, neural network, and Gen AI, I think, which is probably the most popular word right now. So the Gen AI has a special value definition. I actually looked it up in Wikipedia just to be sure, but yeah. So I think machine learning is basically when you train on some data to use some coefficients in the future. AI can be different, and Cascadeur is a part of Neki, and Neki is a gaming company. I know about AI from gaming perspective, making the NPCs move, etc. And AI might not use machine learning at all. A lot of times it's state machine. It's still usually called AI, but that's not what people mean right now. Yeah, neural networks is basically a type of architecture, how to arrange the coefficients to train them. And the Gen AI has the most vague understanding, a good definition, in my opinion, which basically means that it's a large AI that creates some content. At least that's how I understand it.
So when we look at this in-betweening, right, as you define it in, let's say, this update, towards what kind of like angle does it lean?
Well, it's definitely machine learning. because we used a data set of several hours of mockup data, mostly, that we did ourselves to train the model. The model is not a very small model, but it's not a huge model like the LLMs, etc. I don't know. It's you could say it's an average model, and it's quite a fast model. So it's not a diffusion model, diffusion approach, which means it just runs and generates an output. It's definitely an AI and definitely a neural network model, and it uses transformer architecture. By the way, another definition that is, if we'll try to figure out what is AI, Gen AI, etc., another definition that we could mention, the transformer, which is the architecture used in large language models right now. So it does use an architecture of transformer. It is trained on our data. It has millions of parameters, not billions, and it does generate content. And if we bind the definition of Gen AI to content generation, then probably it is a Gen AI model.
Because the other point is that how is that different than the procedural generation, procedural animation that we have had for years? Because that was also one of the claim that many people said. So this is nothing new. Is it or not?
Well, there was a lot of different animation generation. I don't know what exactly is meant here. There definitely was a lot of motion capture. I don't know if that is counted as procedural generation, but it does generate animation based on either optical data or other types of data. So, and it's been here for years. There has been also some heuristic algorithm that generate, I don't know, a spider moving on a plane and moving its legs. And it's just a plain mathematical construction, plain heuristics. There have been Vulkan run generators, which usually work on some functions like Bezier functions. So there has been a lot. And there have been physical-based systems, and one of the most mentioned is Endorphin by Natural Motion, and it's actually still used, to my knowledge, in Rockstar games, GTA, Red Dead Redemption. It was actually AI, and it used neural networks, again, as far as I know, but basically this neural networks controlled the character, which then was controlled character's muscles, etc. So this was an approach that used AI. Was it a generative AI? Probably not, although it's questionable. Via this work of the muscle system and the physical simulation, it did generate an animation. So so a lot of scenarios here. In our case,
and so when you look, yes, exactly. So maybe what I want to do is that I want to quickly play the clip that got a lot of people, let's say, triggered reactions. So there is like a frame, and then there is, okay, we got now another frame, and then the rest that we see here generate in between from that frame to the other is then generated via the in-betweening features in Cascadeur, right? We're going to look at more of this later with maybe some example from you as well. But this is, in that case, is that procedural animation, or there is some mix of different techniques to reach that final result?
It's a mix, but largely this is generated by a neural network, as I said, with transformer architecture and medium-sized. But then we do apply some algorithms on top, mainly to clean the foot movement, make it a bit more refined. But mostly it's AI system that generates the animation. So this is, I don't know, this is generative AI in however you look at it.
So then when we look at the, let's say, the balance, right, in which Cascadeur tried to position itself as a product, some people have been saying that the heavy lifting in Cascadeur is an AI, is instead the, let's say, physics-driven motion. How do you kind of like balance those two aspects? Can you give us some example where, let's say, this physics-driven motion is particularly useful or used in Cascadeur? How does that balance up with this AI-driven motion instead?
Well, currently what we saw, it was purely AI. The only thing, the algorithms we used to clean the foot motion, they were developed by the physics team and developed originally for our physics tools. We do have physics tools that you can apply on top of that. And a lot of times they combine very well with the AI output because AI actually is not very good with physics. physics tools can improve the results of what AI creates. And I think what's also very different in our scenario compared to many procedural animation that was done before is that what we try to create is a tool to use to get the final result, but keep it under control. It's not just a separate thing that creates something and then you have to work with it. We try to create a program with a tool set that allows you to generate and then refine it, control it, etc.
And this is another one of the most important thing, I think, because every time we talk about AI, the other side of the spectrum is like AI does everything and you lose control, you don't get what you want, right? And this is not just you get what you want, but sometimes you don't get the stylized effect that maybe you would want. Everything's going to look the same. And those were one also of the main concern from people. So maybe let's start by saying, how do you recommend people to use this in-betweening at first?
Well, we are currently ourselves figuring out how to use it best. But right now, and we have tutorials to teach about that on our channel, the recommendation is the basic recommendation. If you want to start from scratch, you create a one pose, second pose, as shown in the video, maybe third pose, then you turn on AI, and then you can put additional keyframes between the generated result and refine them. At some point, though, when the keyframes get too dense, they start to influence each other. So at some point, I would recommend to use our unbaking tool to replace the AI interpolation with standard interpolation, and it will place enough keys so that the AI interpolation that was generated will not change. And then you can just control every keyframe as you want. So this is the general approach, but there are other scenarios how you can use in-betweening. For example, if you have two animations and you want to kind of glue them together, fill the missing part because they don't stack one after each other, you can also use in between for that, and it works very good. And another scenario we used it inside our company is when you have some motion, maybe motion captured, and it's like a character walking forward, for example, with a baseball bat, picking up the baseball bat and moving forward, and you want the same motion to move to the side, to the left side, right side, backward. You can easily take the poses from the original animation, copy them, and use in between and generate motion. And then you can use, in this case, you can use more keyframes from the start because you have one of the versions. So the tool can be used in various scenarios.
So when we look, there is, let's say, a need to get motion in a sense, like, okay, I want this character to move from here to here, or maybe jump, and then there is another layer that is the fact of stylizing the motion, right? I imagine that a kid moves very different than an orc or than a woman again, right? So how do you add that level of stylization that could be across characters or between personalities? Is that something that is done with this unbaking process that you have mentioned? Are there other ways to obtain a stylistic effect after you have created these rough blockouts, for example, using AI?
Well, first thing, currently, the data set doesn't cover a lot of different styles, the data set that we have. But already, even now, we have tested it with, for example, walking zombie, and it seems like the poses and the timing dictate a lot to the AI how it should behave. So it tries to reach these poses, and the poses actually influence what result you will get. We do plan in the future to enlarge the data set, and we also currently we don't have styles like feminine, masculine, orc, or something like that. We have tags for walking, running, and that's also a problem you can sometimes encounter using in between, that it will do something unnecessary. So the tags help the AI to understand what to do. And maybe in the future, the tags will just turn into prompts where you can specify different parameters like more masculine animation, more feminine animation, etc.
So is the limitation of getting a more stylized look basically the data set that was used in the model? Is that the core one, or there are other challenges to get something that is instead more varied and diversified when it comes to the way the AI interpolates between these two frames?
It's one of the problems, but there are other technical limitations. The current model we use, it's not super large. It's not a diffusion model. And for this model, add-in stylization is not as easy. And we want to keep this model relatively small so it works pretty fast, because this model has to work like an interpolation algorithm. So it's possible to just change something, change the pose, and immediately see the result that you will get.
And there is another thing to mention, by the way, for people listening. This runs on your computer. So this doesn't run on the cloud. And that is another element to be added to the whole picture when it comes to, we have a average size model. That also probably is one of the reason, because it runs locally.
Yes. It runs locally. No information is passed to the cloud. And I think this is one of the reasons that gets people worried, because when you talk with an LLM, for example, all your data is stored somewhere on the servers. In our case, right now, actually, in Cascadeur, there are no models that send anything to the cloud. Everything is being run locally on the CPU. And at least for the in-betweening tool, I think it will stay like this. Probably we will add different larger models, and some of them will run to the cloud, although not a lot of times. Maybe those won't be our models, but we will just include other services, like services that generate meshes, for example. Maybe in the future we can add something like Trigo AI, Mesh AI right into the software. But right now, our own models are probably models that will mostly run on the computer, and they will run fast, because we try to get them as deep into the pipeline as possible, so that it's a part of the process of editing the animation, not just a generator that gives you something.
I was wondering, maybe can you give us some example of this in action, right? You mentioned the characters moving left or right and adding this extra motion. Maybe it would be good to kind of like see it in action so that people can get a better understanding of how this works.
Yeah, sure. Let me share my screen. I've actually prepared not too much, but I just wanted to show this as an example. Suppose, and let's start with something like this. So this is one pose. Basically, it's the default pose of our character. And in the frame 45, I set another key with another pose. Very simple pose. I did it basically by moving a couple of control points. And so if I turn in between interpolation between them, what I'll get is the character running from the first pose to the next. And if I, for example, move this from the 45th frame to 90th frame, then you will see that the motion will change as it has more time. Now it's walking from the first pose to the next one. And we can add additional poses of the character, and you can see that the character tries to cover all the poses. Let me hide the controllers.
And then you mentioned about this unbaking, right? In a sense, like where this is like broken up in multiple keyframes that then are, let's say, easier to edit, if I understood correctly.
Yeah, the unbaking works like this. You can select the interval and press this button. But I would say that unbaking is probably better at later stages. So while you have like 15 frames between the keyframes, it's better to just add keyframes on top. Unbaking will place quite a number of keyframes and place standard interpolation between them. But now all these frames are actually controlled by you, and you can move any frame, and it will not. The interpolation between these frames is just standard interpolation.
Okay.
Other things I would want to mention, if it's okay, that we handled, especially in this update, is that before In-Between was like a tool that you select and press a button, and it calculates generates with the help of AI some motion. Right now, it's different in the sense that if I don't know, suppose I want my hands to be in front of the character, and I'll put it here as well. The AI doesn't know what to do. Actually, maybe you want the hands to stay here, maybe not.
Yeah.
It will just work in some way. So what you can do now that it's part of the interpolation is you can go here and instead of using AI only for the arms, you can set something different, like PC action, for example. It works not ideal because it's IK. One of the problems we have here is that people have to understand how IK and FK works. And this is something we're giving a lot of thought right now, how to automate all of this. And in Cascadeur, the interpolation rules can be IK and FK, and the frames can be IK and FK. And yeah, we're thinking how to make the UX easier.
Oh, that
and
looks
so,
pretty good now.
Yeah, you can see that for the arms, a simple interpolation is used, and that allows us to keep arms moving as we want. And we can add keyframes here only in the arms and do something, and it won't affect how the AI interpolation will work.
Yeah. So let's go back a second to also how do you envision this being used? Can you maybe stop sharing your screen, or you want to show something else?
Yeah, I can stop. I'm not an animator though, so my skills are, I'm more a technical guy. My animation skills are not nice.
I mean, there is a lot of showcase on the website and on the thing made by incredible animators, and that's the beauty of it, in a way that people can show and demonstrate something, but that's when who really is into the craft and has the experience working years or decades on something like this, you don't even need to explain what is the difference between IK and FK, right? Because that is part of their vocabulary, the skills. There is no need to do this type of explanation. But I would like to understand now is a bit like, for what do you see this being used? There is the hero character type of animation. There is the background character. There is like the blocking stage, maybe the prototyping. So how do you see these, at least maybe by people using currently Cascadeur, using these specific features?
Well, in my opinion, Cascadeur can be used for any type of animation. You can, as you have full control, you can create. I mean, the pros of Cascadeur is that it has a low entry barrier. It's much easier to start with Cascadeur. It's much faster to create the initial motion. It's also possible to get realistic motion because it has unique physics tools, and but you still can control everything. So I would recommend it for everything, at least for everything humanoid, because right now most of the tools, they only work for humanoids. The in-between, the auto-pausing, although we support the custom rigs. You can rig anything with our basic rig, but AI tools, they work only for humanoids. And in the last update, we started supporting quadrupeds for auto-pausing. So yeah, I think I would recommend to use it for any type of animation. But of course, the question of how high will the quality be depends a lot on the animator. So on the person who is actually implementing. We see a lot of indie developers using for all the animations in their games. Yeah, I don't think there are any problems with like more hero type or background character type.
Also out of curiosity, right? I mean, do you see people that are building more games, or they are more into VFX and maybe animations in a form of, like, let's say, animated movies? Is there like a crowd that gathers around Cascadeur specifically for any reason you have seen?
I think mostly it's for games. At least what I see, I participate in the support chats, and I have a separate chat in Discord, which is called features, requested features and feedback. And what I see is mostly games, and I think then VFX.
There are then another of the bigger questions was, and I think you partially answered it, but I really want you to say it, and is the AI based on stolen data, right? This is immediately, people see AI, and that's the first thing that they draw to conclusions. You mentioned that this is used to train on your own data, it runs locally. So a few things you have said there, but maybe also for the most skeptics, right? That are still like, they use this sort of a way to push away anything that is related to AI. What would you say? How could you reassure them that this is not the case?
Well, we actually did even a Twitter post where usually when we do the mocap session, we also record the video. So we have a lot of videos of how we did the mocap sessions. So, and we did a Twitter post, keeping in mind that this is kind of course, there's no way to prove 100% that this trained neural network was trained only on this data. I think it's close to impossible to do that, but we did record our own data, and I think one of the ways we can show that it is by, I don't know, posting a video about it. And yeah, I don't know what.
So maybe instead from the other side, right? When you get, I suppose that you meet people that might not necessarily all open to AI as people on your Discord, right? So I imagine those are the people that are believers and they are excited to see something that accelerates their workflow. That's not always the case, right? So when you hear from people that are not that open, friendly, or sometimes they are outright against it, what are your arguments?
About Cascadeur.
About the implementation of AI in animation workflows.
And you mean not as, is it more a question of ethical and how the data was acquired? Or I think a lot of people...
Absolutely. You made a good point. So the question is, there is this general level. The first is like the reaction when you say, oh yeah, this is all stolen data. It's stealing the work of artists. Because this is generic comments and remarks that people make. Then you might say, oh, well, that's not the case. Cascadeur, we do things ethically. We have trained our own model. It runs all locally on your PC. Yeah, but this is going to remove the craft from the people. And a lot of people are going to lose their job because of this AI implementation. This is the reality of the conversation. This is how people kind of like address and voice their concern when it comes to their own livelihood being put at risk by the AI. That's how it's perceived. In this type of conversation, what kind of arguments you bring up? What is your stance?
Oh, it will be more of my personal stance, not like the company's stance. But from my personal perspective, first of all, I'm more of a programmer. I do use AI when I program. I use Cursor mainly right now, and I kind of try to use AI to, for me, I try to use AI to be up to date, to understand how it can enhance my capabilities as a programmer. And although I hear a lot about people being able to do mostly what I see, some small projects without any knowledge of programming with AI. For a software like Cascadeur, in my personal experience, I'm not worried that AI will replace programmers. More like I feel that it's a little bit overhyped. It's not as easy to get help from AI when programming, and so I wouldn't be worried for that too much. And another line of thought that I had on this topic is that from what I heard talking with people, the artists, different artists, that, for example, when digital cameras appeared, there was a lot of this conversation as well. And right now, when everybody has cameras in their own phone, which have automatic focus, etc., a lot more people are able to do photos. And on the technical level, I think it's much easier to do photos. But it doesn't mean that there are less professional photographers, I think. I didn't research it in depth, but I don't think there's smaller number of them.
So what you're hinting is also like, okay, then there are more people taking pictures, and then there are opportunities overall for new market, and maybe also for the indie photographer or the one that specializes on making wedding videos just using your iPhone, right? Because that's also the kind of things that appear, right? Then it opens up these opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. There is, with photos, there's now like Instagram, TikTok with photos and videos. So it's like I don't know, the number of people who actually do photos increased not by 10 or 100. I think it's more like thousands of times. And yeah, is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? It's hard to say. But
you made a very good point, though. You made a very good point in a sense. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? So I think this is all valid for all sorts of, like, in this case, AI right now, right? When everybody can make a video without even having a camera, right? Or sitting at a desk doing any editing, right? What does it mean for the type of content being produced? Is necessarily more content of whatever form a good thing? Because I would argue that then the problem is, how do we consume that content? Because there is certainly more content than we will ever be able to consume out there. And it's just going to get even more difficult
to solve somehow. I think like TikTok, YouTube, these are some kind of solutions to that problem. So they have algorithms they sort, maybe not ideal. They have subscription, so you can subscribe to something and then you know that this channel produces this type of content. Yeah. So I mean, I would acknowledge that there is a problem with that. One of the things that gets people worried is that instead of producing high quality content, we will get a lot of low quality content generated with AI. I think that getting people's attention, kind of trending, is a hard thing to do, and people will sort out what to watch, and the amount of content that will be consumed in large quantities is limited, and the more you can control the creation of that content, the better result you can achieve.
So maybe to close up a bit the conversation, what I was curious is what kind of capabilities do you plan to add on Cascadeur? So you mentioned, hey, maybe we're going to bring meshes. And I imagine there is a rigging element. I suppose that there is a lot to do in the current workflow, keyframes, timelines, and so on. So what are the things you're working on and how do you prioritize them?
Well, for this year, our priorities are adding animation layers, which is a popular tool, but a pretty professional tool, that is, and adding facial animation. Right now, we don't have facial animation, and for our target audience of indie developers, the fact that you have to animate the face somewhere else is a very big problem blocker.
Yep.
To not just use Cascadeur, and that's all for the character animation. So these are our closest goals. Of course, we plan to enhance and cover other types of rigs. Maybe we add in between for the quadrupeds. Maybe we add some other type of skeletons that we support.
Alex, thank you very much. I think the opportunities are there. I'm looking forward to see how Cascadeur evolves. And thank you very much for shedding some light and demystifying all that is happening behind Cascadeur, and encourage everybody to go out there, try it out. Runs on your local linear PC. It has a simple way to start creating and animating. So try it out. Alex, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Very glad to be here.
Thank you very much for listening in. If you like the show, remember to leave a rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or a thumbs up on YouTube. It really helps me keep doing this and shine the spotlights on the greatest founders and makers, pushing the boundaries of XR and AI. Also, make sure to check out the show page xraispotlight.com, where you can find more conversation like this one. Till next time.